I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I've read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's a teen author. My goodness, people, teen author. She's the author of the book Good But Not Good Enough. No other than Miss Simran Sahu.
Hello.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Simran, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yes, of course. So I'm a current freshman at Princeton University right now studying economics. And I wrote this book when I was a junior in high school. But the actual idea of this book came from when I was a lot younger. Actually, when I was a freshman in high school, I was writing a speech about gender inequality in the workplace. And it was a 10-minute speech. And I was collecting all of these negative testimonials and facts about how women would never be able to succeed in the workplace and that I would never be able to fulfill my dreams because of all this gender inequality. And I was presenting it to my speech and debate coach, and I was halfway through the speech when she stopped me and she said, "How do you expect to be part of the solution and actually make a difference if you're just continuing to perpetuate this problem?" Because here I was, 14 years old in high school, and I wanted my classmates and the judges and the other people around me to listen to this 10-minute speech about how I believe that women could never succeed. And so her message, it really resonated with me. And so I began collecting more testimonials, more facts. But this time, when I was talking to these women, I asked them, how did you overcome these obstacles? What do you do now? Do you really feel this hopeless? Or have you used this pain and discouragement that you endured in your workplace to create something better? And every single person that I talked to had. And so I began collecting all those stories, and then eventually I had so many that I was like, I should write a book on them. And so I sat down when I was 16 years old, and I compiled all these stories together. I included some of my own personal experiences with gender inequality. I also talked to men who felt confined by gender inequality as well, and I was able to create this book and share it with so many people.
Miss Simran Sahu, thank
Yes.
you so much for sharing your talent to the world. Good, but not good enough. That's awesome. So, what does women empowerment mean to you?
Yeah. So, I think like when I was writing this book, I realized that a lot of these women that I talked to or I was profiling weren't very like well-known people, and you wouldn't know their stories until you actually sat down and talked to them. And so I think women empowerment is about not just highlighting stories of really really powerful women that we, see in the news every day, but it's about realizing that even just a random person that we walk by on the street has so much, has fought so many battles and has maybe done so many amazing things for us young girls who are entering the workplace. And all of these women collectively together have paved the path. It's not just some of the really high profile ones that we celebrate. And I think like um profiling their stories and immortalizing them on paper allows for generations across the world to read them even after those women leave the world and like we leave the world too. And so I think that's really powerful.
Definitely, totally agree with you. And I highly recommend to read the book of Miss Cara Cooney, When Women Ruled the World, Sixth Queen of Egypt. You can imagine there that women rule supreme in the time of Egyptians. So, how can society challenge traditional gender roles to empower women?
Hmm. um I think something that I've heard a lot is, oh, we've come so far, and I talk about this in the first like couple chapters of my book, with progress. And so I think women have been challenging traditional gender roles from all the way before the 1950s. And so the way I wrote my book was I structured it, the first two chapters at least, were before 1950s, after 1950s. And I profiled many, many different women in all different types of industries, and I also talked about the suffrage movement, right? And so I think some people now say like, oh, gender inequality doesn't exist because we we've come so far and we've made all this progress. But I think in terms of like challenging like traditional gender norms, it's about realizing that all these women have done so much and that we can continue to do more, and because they've challenged these gender norms in the past and have succeeded, we can continue doing that. And I think some like very like uh prevalent gender norms is the fact that mothers should be caretakers and that they should be the primary like people to, like when it comes down to it, if it's too expensive to pay for childcare, because unfortunately national childcare still isn't free in the United States, or paid maternity leave isn't mandated throughout the United States, it's oftentimes the mother's responsibility to take leave from their work and take care of their children. But in reality, there's a lot of research that shows that a lot of men also want to take on paternity leave and want to take care of their children, but either they're afraid of what their workplace or their like managers would say, or in fact like it's just not the traditional thing to do for like the father to take care of the child instead of the mother. And I think once we kind of like use the past stories as inspiration, as oh, once upon a time women couldn't vote, but all of these women came together, and now women can vote and now women do go to the polls, we can kind of start shifting traditional or standards of like, oh, for example, like a mother should be the caretaker, and continue on creating these changes.
Very well said. Very well said, Mr. I totally agree 100% for you. So, what are the key barriers women face in achieving equality and empowerment?
hmm So, one of the stories that really resonated with me was how this woman, her salary was based off of her previous salary at a different workplace. And so when another man came in and he was much younger than her, he had less education than her, and he also had less experience than her, his starting salary was a lot higher than her salary was. And one of the acts that still hasn't been fully recognized by America is the Paycheck Fairness Act, which eliminates salaries that have any like you can't base a person's salary based off of their previous salaries, because the issue with that is the previous salary oftentimes has factors attributed towards like gender, right? So if that woman worked in a primarily female dominated career, that would mean that her salary is usually less than a man who works in a more like male dominated field like finance. And so when people take into factor these types of like salary histories, then that gender inequality still perpetuates. And it's the same thing with like I talked about this earlier with like paid maternity leave and childcare. One of the I remember like interviewing a woman who said that when she asked for maternity leave, her boss said, "Oh, this is why I don't like hiring women. They just go off and get pregnant and have babies, right?" And so I remember just being shocked when I heard that, because that's not, first of all, how you should treat someone, but also it's another barrier that prevents women from actually ever advancing in the workplace, because they always have to take off that leave, and then by the time they come back, everyone else seems to be in a much better position than they were than before. Um, Another woman that I talked to, she had to write Christmas cards all day because her manager believed women could only be secretaries. And so that type of culture that is being created by these stereotypes that are still being associated with women are so harmful and are setting them back. And so I think something that I was really inspired by was a lot of these women have begun mentoring younger people, so younger girls, younger boys, just to show them that just because their elders might be doing something or might be trying to promote a certain message doesn't mean that's what's right. And that's why gender inequality is still being perpetuated in our world today, even though so many people are recognizing that it's a bad thing. It's because they're going off of examples of powerful people who can get away with saying demeaning comments, or ensuring women can only do a certain subset of tasks. But if we teach our younger generation, and that's why I felt compelled to write this book as someone who is part of Gen Z, to kind of show them like we can be the ones to finally stop it. Like gender inequality doesn't have to be a problem that we continue to inherit and push, forward, that it can be stopped with us. We just have to continue teaching people that it's not okay to treat women in a certain way.
Definitely good, but not good enough. Is there be a follow up for this book?
Yeah, so I'm really interested in this topic, but not just in the workplace. Something that I'm really interested in, actually, like specifically, in India, which is where my family is from, is that a lot of women, they get pregnant at a very young age, or they're expected to have children, and a lot of women there also um, have to be very dependent on their husbands. And so I think something that I would like to do in the future is travel to India and interview a lot of the women there, and especially like the older women who actually had to um, conform to many of the previous like gender stereotypes in India, and see, maybe what their dreams were, and perhaps what their lives would have looked like if, that if those stereotypes didn't exist. And then also, a lot of these women don't know financial literacy, and they've had, no education really either. And so that's why I'm also really interested in learning about what their like education and their schooling looked like, because again, like I think it's really important for people all over the world, not just people in India, to understand that this is a problem that can be solved by, looking at these women, these much older women, and seeing how we can, stop it from a younger generation.
So, how does education contribute to empowering women globally?
Hmm. So, like I said earlier, if we don't, if a woman doesn't know basic financial literacy skills, for example, like how to open a credit card, or what's the difference between a credit card and a debit card, they have to be dependent on, the people that are around them, and so they can't really be independent and take control of their own lives. They always have to kind of like listen to what their, the people around them say. And I think, like, also, like, obviously there's, domestic violence and physical violence and even sexual violence, but there's also economic abuse, where a lot of men can take advantage of the fact that their partners may not have knowledge when it comes to economic means. And so if also that woman doesn't have the education to be able to support themselves, because nowadays, like, to get a job, you have to be extremely qualified. You have to have a lot of education behind you. And also, a lot of women don't apply to jobs unless they believe they're 100% qualified for them. And that's just, and whereas like a man can usually apply to a job simply because they're confident, right? And also, a lot of these women from more like underdeveloped developed countries don't really know how to speak in English either. And so when it comes to interviewing, or when it comes to presenting themselves in a certain manner, they don't have even the resources to communicate their knowledge, even if they had that knowledge. And especially since our world is being revolutionized by technology and artificial intelligence, women in STEM is not as common. And also, a lot of times women feel like they can't even go into STEM fields. They, don't have the intelligence to sit down and learn how to computer program or learn how to use technology. And so that's why I feel like, if they don't have access to education or tools, they're more readily, um, they more readily seek out dependence, even if that's not what they want.
What role do men play in supporting women's empowerment?
Hmm. I think the first thing that men need to do is understand that gender inequality is not something that just affects women, but it affects them too. And unfortunately, our society has kind of labeled men as the breadwinners, as the people who need to be independent, as people who can't show their emotions, they can't be sensitive. And has, made them feel like they need to take care of their family no matter what happens. But the reality is that we're all human, and that we all have human emotions, and that we should be able to express them. And so, I think if they understand that gender inequality, it's not something that is solely for women, it's for them too, they would be more compelled to join in the fight. But I think also, like, in terms of how they can contribute, is, you know fathers should teach sons how to be mindful. no, it shouldn't be just mothers teaching sons. They should be good examples for the younger generation. And also, um, it's men have a lot of power in today's society. A lot of them hold some of the biggest management positions in the country. Um, and there's a lot of research on, the number of male CEOs in specific industries compared to number of female CEOs. And when it comes to their hiring standards and the way that they hold interviews and the way that they seek out new employees, they should recognize their power and the fact that they have a voice that a lot of people listen to, and start changing the narrative and start changing the way that they hire, start changing the way they perceive other people, because a lot of people will follow them regardless if they're male or female.
Very well said, Miss Imran. So, what strategies can help close the gender pay gap?
um in terms of the gender pay gap, I think there needs to be less groupings of like what a male dominated industry should be and what a female dominated industry should be. I think a lot of like the culture around it, like for example, like in medicine, right? Like it's considered a more of a female dominated industry. Finance considered more of a male dominated industry. And I think jobs shouldn't be catered towards a certain gender. Obviously, I think, there are some characteristics perhaps that men have that women don't, that women have that men don't. But at the end of the day, we still see interests in both sides. And I think that because statistically, usually STEM fields have more like higher income associated with them, it's really important that women have more role models in STEM industries and realize that, yes, STEM is not a male dominated industry. It's an industry that would readily accept them if they had the education to do so, if they had the caliber and resilience to also do so. And I think if we see more girls and women enter the STEM industries, we would see also like a, a, um, a decrease in the average gender pay gap, because then, we would have more like higher paying salaries there.
So, Miss Imran, what is your advice for those aspiring writers out there?
Mm-hmm. I know when I was writing this book and I was telling people, a lot of people didn't really think that I could do it, because obviously I'm a junior in high school. I don't have, a lot of book writing experience in the past. But I think if you really believe in something and you truly truly want to write, it doesn't have to be a book. It can be a short story. I started off with small poems. I started off with, short stories. You can honestly do anything you put your mind to. I grew up reading literally every book that I could, get my hands on. Um, I just loved reading so much, and I was so inspired by all these fictional characters that I kind of wanted to profile the real ones in my life. And I think it's just about believing in yourself. And also, if you can always find my LinkedIn and reach out to me, I'd be more than happy to talk to you and talk through your ideas. And I've actually like mentored some people in the past who came in knowing that they had a topic like loosely that they wanted to write about, and we kind of like brainstormed the specific niche that they wanted to go in. um, Honestly, like it doesn't have to be nonfiction. It doesn't have to be a topic that you want to promote and like make a difference about. It could just be a fiction book. It could just be that you love writing so much that you want to like show off all your poems. But at the end of the day, don't listen to people who say that you can't do it. Listen to yourself who knows that you can do it. And if you have the genuine resolve to do so, you
Yes, you can, people, and stop procrastinating. Go,
can.
go, go. If you have the passion to write, 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 just like Miss Samaran. See, at the age of young age, she has a good but not good enough. And for sure, there will be a follow up for this book. And we encourage you to do so, to have produce more books that empower women all over the world. So if you want to recommend book that you read or books that you read, which one or what are they?
um there was a memoir that I read in high school that really resonated with me. It was called Crying in H Mart. And she wrote it about how she celebrated her mother through who passed away due to cancer. But she was able to pay homage to the Korean half, like the half of her Korean culture that she lost due to her mom passing away through food. And so she would go to the H Mart and she would look at all of these different foods and kind of like honor her mother through them. And she started cooking more, and her mom and her, like, they had a very interesting relationship. And I think the way that she wrote really resonated with me, and that's kind of like how I write too, is like I look at different authors and I look at their style and I look at the way that they write, and when I learned how to appreciate them, I kind of like take their ideas and take their style and mesh them together and try to bring out my own voice through them too. And I think like when you learn how to like appreciate the way people write and not just what they write, you become a better writer as well. But I think the way that she was able to use a metaphor of a marketplace of food to talk about a subject that obviously was very close to her, and it took a lot of you know pain. um, that subject was very painful for her. I think it was, a very good read, and it definitely made me appreciate my culture, my food, and my family more.
So, what are your short term and long term goals in writing?
hmm Um, I think short-term goals. I want to get more into journalism. I want to join my school's newspaper in the spring, and kind of like start like profiling people on campus and talking to people and just learning about what they do and what kind of projects that they've taken on. Um, because what like I said earlier, we never know someone's story until we ask them. And uh, if we don't ask them, then their story kind of like dies with them. So I think I feel this like responsibility now that I've written this book to kind of like keep continuing to do that. Um, but long term goals, I think I would like to produce a lot more books, specifically on women empowerment and kind of bringing to light, all of these different women's struggles, whether it be in the workplace or whether they're never allowed in the workplace in the first place, like I was talking about with those women in India. I think it's like, honestly, I'm just like really excited to just keep writing. I'm not sure where it will take me, but I'm definitely considering some more books in the future.
Yes, Miss Simran Sahu, thank you so much for sharing your talent to the world, and we encourage you to write more empowering books so that women will empowered and they know what they are doing, right? To have an equal rights. So, Miss Simran, can you please invite our listeners to support Good But Not Good Enough? So can you please invite them to
Oh
support
yes,
your?
of course. You can find my book on Amazon, Target website, um, literally anywhere. Just search up "Good but Not Good Enough" Simran Sahu, and you will see it. Also Barnes and Noble and Goodreads. But yes, if you want to read my book, I think it would be a really good read for not just women, but also little girls like me who have really big dreams, boys who want to see how they can how they can stop the problem today and not in the future, and also uh, people in the workplace currently, so that they can see what their colleagues and their peers have done to pave the path for a younger generation.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Simran Sahu because if you support her, more empowering books to come. So Miss Simran, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon. And you are most welcome to come back to promote